Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the Freshman 15 podcast. It's been a long time since the national title game, and a lot has happened in college football. But tonight is a very special episode of the Freshman 15 because tonight's episode, we're going to focus on one particular player who unquestionably is one of the best players, if not the best player in the nation. But there's a lot of talk about the investment of said player and if it's worth it. So the focus of tonight's show is on one player. That is Bijan Robinson. And as always, I'll be joined by Tyler Moore of More Outdoors to discuss. With that said, Tyler, what's up, man?
Not too much. How you doing, man? It's draft season, so it's getting ready to pick up here in about a month. So it's gonna be pretty fun.
I feel like we've hit like a dead sprint. And I feel like, you know how they say like the NFL is like an all-year league?
Yeah.
So is like this, man. So is college football too, oddly enough. Like you have your spring games coming up very soon. You have recruitment's already started from way back then. The combine, pro days, like
transfers,
and it's like a full sprint from like start to finish. Then you re-up, you run it back all over again. So man, there is no off season. We've taken an off season.
Oh yeah, definitely. I haven't even watched any XFL and USFL when it comes on. I probably won't watch that either, man. I've decompressed from football, so it's
man. Funny thing is, I watch baseball. I've been watching WBC baseball. I've been cooling, man. Honestly, it's been a long time. So to get back on the wagon with you, kind of talking football again, just feels right, man. You know what I'm saying? Just kind of feels right. So tonight, man, I wanted to focus on Bijan Robinson, and the reason why I feel like there's been a lot of talk about Robinson, about the player himself, or how he projects, and I feel like we love college football, but we also love where players end up in storylines, and I think that kind of to that same vein of storylines and you know where people end up, it takes a hold of college football fans and NFL fans because I think they kind of intersect on the same street. And this is the one player where we know he's a great talent, but we know what the position asks of and what it demands at the NFL level. So just kind of what this show tonight is, outside of the lens of you and I both being Cowboys fans, but overall just NFL fans and college football fans, why do you think when it comes to Bijan Robinson, it's a hot button issue?
basically, he's a top 5 player in the country, but he plays at one of the least valuable positions in football right now. So, I mean, that's just basically it in a nutshell. Top 5 player, not a good position for value. So it is what it is.
It's crazy too, man, because I we're both in our 30s and we've been watching football for a long time. And I came up in football during the time where your cornerstones of franchises were, hate to say this, but linebackers and running backs, right? Where you're taking a running back top 5, you're taking a linebacker top 5. And that has kind of gone away in recent years, but the talent is still there at the position. But it just makes you think like, okay, it's a great player. It's what they call a quote unquote safe pick by taking them. No matter where you take them, you're getting a great player. But I think it's that a lot of the old heads, man, cannot let go of the antiquated philosophies of the NFL back in the 80s and the 90s of establishing the run. And Bijan, I think, is a great talent who's kind of caught in the middle, where it's not his fault. With a lot of running backs, it's not their fault. They can't choose where they're picked, and they can't choose their shelf life because that's just what the nature of the business calls on. So I think it's a hot button issue. I've kind of mused before. It's also not to be too Cowboy centric, but it's also a UT Cowboys thing as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And having to replace, we've seen the mock drafts too, right? Where you feel like you lose a player, therefore you have to replace a player at the same spot. I've seen the mock drafts of a Dalton Kincaid or a Bijan Robinson or a Darnell Washington, or Jahmyr Gibbs. Like you have to do that. But the one phrase that I think that gets tossed around way too much, and you know what I'm going to say?
Generational. Him, yeah.
He and
generational. Hold on, I'm gonna read you something right here. Okay,
go
ready? I pull this up. So position versatility is singularly impressive amongst the running backs in this class, and it would be the same for most draft classes. He can run inside and outside with tremendous speed, lateral agility, and acceleration. As a receiver, he can line up anywhere from offset in a pistol formation to the slot in the outside. He has potential to be the NFL's best receiving back since Le'Veon Bell rounded out the skill set. It's easy to see why some would tout him as truly a great back, and in many aspects of his play, he is just that. Who is that?
Marshall Faulk?
No, it's Saquon Barkley.
What?
Yeah, that's Saquon Barkley.
What?
So you go back to let's say 2015. So
I'm
you
sorry.
have
I got twisted. You're right.
yeah,
My bad.
2015, you have Melvin Gordon, Todd Gurley. 2016, you have Ezekiel Elliott in the first round. 2017, you had playoff Lenny and CMC. 2018, you get Saquon Barkley. 2019, I'm not even sure there was one in the first round. And then 2020 is Josh Jacobs.
Mm-hmm.
None of those guys panned out to be generational. You might be able to say CMC, but he's always hurt.
Yeah.
Saquon Barkley, always hurt. And that's the thing. Like you draft these guys and you kind of want them to be your centerpiece of your offense, but they don't get to be the centerpiece of your offense because they're hurt.
Yeah.
You're taking a guy who's gonna touch the ball, 250, 300, 350 times, just rushing it, plus on top of other snaps, he's gonna get hurt. And so why would you invest? Why would you invest in such a high valuable player at a high position when you can get something, when you get the same production for something later on? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And it's funny, man.
That's basically it. And that's the problem with like generational. The last truly generational running back was Adrian Peterson, drafted in 2007. We'd probably never see a run like that ever again because offenses have changed. No one is running that kind of offense anymore. Like he was that focal point. Even after he got hurt with that ACL, he's still cooked. Like the league MVP the next year. And you're not going to see that out of a running back anymore because offenses have changed philosophy-wise. You're just never going to see a running back like that ever again. So that is why there's no such thing as a generational running back anymore.
So funny thing is, man, like, cool dude on Twitter, Wedge 88, I put out a tweet and he talked about just the random running backs that go on these just crazy runs to start their career or at some point in the middle of their careers. And, he's an old school guy as well. He likes to name off guys. We kind of just history buffs when it comes to NFL football. And we'll name off random players that have 1,600 yards, 1,700 yards, 18. And the names that we dropped in those tweets going back and forth were names that guys that were taken way after the first round. Guys like Amon Green, guys like a Terry Allen. Guys that you can just name off the cuff that break off of this kind of production.
Yeah, even recently it's Nick Chubb and Jonathan Taylor. Second round guys.
That too.
Yeah.
And pretty much anybody, man. Dalvin Cook, Mr. 2000, Derrick Henry, second round as well. It tells you this over and over and over and over again that no matter how good of a prospect you think that he is, no matter how good, there's other guys that can do the exact same thing given the same scenario. And you mentioned Nick Chubb, who's also part of a committee as well. So you see where all this kind of comes into play. And you talked about generational. I also wrote down Saquon Barkley. Guys like that are generational. You said Adrian Peterson, the durability. And a guy who was just as durable for so many years was Frank Gore, taken in, I believe, the second round, if not the fourth round. So again, it all depends on what you're asking somebody to do and the amount for that physicality. So that's my one big thing, man. So like you said, are they generational? He might be a great talent.
But he might be a generational player. He's not a generational running back.
And
that's how I see it.
To add to that point, I think that's dependent upon the offensive line. That's the biggest one is, sure, he might be. But even a guy like Adrian Peterson, when he walked into a situation that had what I would argue to be a Hall of Fame center in Matt Burke, a true Hall of Fame right guard in Steve Hutchinson, a maybe borderline Hall of Famer, perennial Pro Bowler player in Bryant McKinney. So you hit it at all three phases of the offensive line. That position is so dependent upon the offensive line. And again, to bring it back to Dallas for just 1 second, we don't have that right now. We don't have that kind of line caliber to give them that kind of environment right now. And a lot of teams in the NFL don't have that and aren't built that way in order to do that. Talk about Saquon Barkley. Well, he kind of fell backwards too based on their line struggles as well. He's kind of a victim of that. So I think when it comes to the term generational, we have to kind of get out of that term generational because even guys taken in the top 5, and again, it's been so many guys, especially UT guys, your Ricky Williams of the world, your Cedric Bensons of the world. It's so many guys that have been taken that high that we were deemed as not generational, but top tier talents that didn't pan out. So I can't see it like that. But here's one question I have to ask you. And I'm sure the answer is no, but because, we have this question planned out. Is there any team possible in the NFL that can win a title with the running back being the centerpiece of their offense? Is there any way that happens in today's modern NFL?
No. So the reason I say no is the closest thing that you see is the San Francisco 49ers. They're basically, they're a perennial, like almost Super Bowl cuss team. And they can never get it because they don't have the quarterback. They have the players to run the football. So you got CMC. They trade for CMC. Hey, he's going to put us over the top. He doesn't put you over the top because you're playing with your four-string quarterback. But you're getting the same production as he did from guys you signed off the streets. You got Mitchell from Ohio State that year. You had Trey Sermon. He played for a couple times, and so it's like you have those guys. So maybe like Mike McDaniel could do it. Andy Reid. I mean, if he had to, but it's basically based off the offensive philosophy. If your offensive coordinator, head coach isn't able to use that piece as the centerpiece, you're not gonna be able to do it because so basically San Francisco, they have a guy like, let's say Deebo Samuel. He can do everything, but he's not touching the ball all the time. But he can be your centerpiece of your offense, but he's not touching the ball all the time. But when he does touch the ball, he's making it count. But if you say the Dallas Cowboys, God forbid, they draft Bijan Robinson in the first round, Jerry Jones, what he's gonna. I'm not even gonna have to say it. You know what he's gonna do. But I mean, you've seen the Chiefs make the mistake. Oh, we're gonna draft CEH, and now he's nowhere to be found. That was a first round running back, basically a wasted pick. I'm not saying he was generational, but it's a first round running back, basically pushed to the wayside. To be honest with you, I don't think it's possible in today's NFL because the Eagles were close, but they had to use their quarterback as a pseudo running back to make it into the Super Bowl as well.
I mean, even to that point, you can look at a team like the Ravens, who are run-centric as well. And maybe it's not just the running back, but the philosophy of the running style. To kind of extend the point further, is the Ravens run-centric, very, very run-heavy. They're not quite there yet. You look at a team like the Titans. Titans have, they were touted the exotic smash mouth. Yeah. They're not there yet either. And they try to do that with a combination of the running back, Derrick Henry, with a mobile quarterback as well. It just seems like you won't quite get there if he's the centerpiece of your offense. And again, it's not to smash on the player. The player is a fantastic talent at running back. But what it is that if he's going to be your centerpiece and you're going to draft him to be your centerpiece, and maybe some people aren't thinking of that to do it that way, which will segue into our next question. But right now, to win in the NFL, you cannot put a premium on running back that high, because eventually what happens is those guys that are taken that high are dealt away. They are traded. CMC was traded. Zeke Elliott was just cut not too long ago. I've seen it time and time again. Josh Jacobs, first round running back too. What's going to happen is that, and we've seen so many guys like that over the course of the NFL, taken in the first round that fell apart. And again, I try to use historical examples because that's how you have to see it. LT did not win a ring. Didn't happen. I think that's before AP. That is your last generational running back right there. Him. Yep. And he didn't win either. So I just think about when you have to have that centerpiece and that focus of your offense being that way, it doesn't quite work. Reggie Bush is another name I want to throw out too. It just doesn't work the same way. But if there is a reason to take a running back in the first round, the question I have to ask, and this is probably the wrap up our show tonight, is there any scenario where taking a running back in the first round makes sense?
I mean, you have to have filled every single position of need in free agency, and like you're set. Like you're basically not going in with any injuries. You have the depth pieces you need. You're gonna draft some other guys, and you say, hey, we could use a little push, and this is the guy that is gonna give us that push. Well, other than that, like if you say you're missing like an offensive guard, or you're missing like a corner, like the premium positions that you're gonna need to make everything else function, you draft those positions in the first round, but then you can fill that later on because this draft is basically every draft now is running back heavy. They all do the same thing. I mean, one might not catch as good as the other one, but yeah, you get what I'm saying.
Nah, I do. And I think now what teams are doing more than often is that they're drafting specialists. The guy that's taken in the first round or in the back half of the first round typically is the jack of all trades. And recent names that come to mind are CEH. They can run a little bit. They can catch a little bit. To take the time before that, maybe like a Donald Brown too. They can run a little bit, catch a little bit. A lot of you guys taken in the first round can do a little bit of everything. But again, most times you just get a specialist, get a guy later on in the draft that can do one or the other. He's your power back or he's your pass catching back. Bijan can do both. He can do, everything essentially. He's kind of the utility knife at running back. If there was one team where it makes sense, it's a team, like you said, that needs a push to go over the top. A team that has pretty much all their boxes checked and needs something. Now, we could debate this. The one team that I thought might do it that made sense was Philly. And I thought about Philly because they have a running game catered to their quarterback that people have to account for. They have the pass catching options at tight end and wide receiver. But if they had a running back, and they have a pretty good offensive line, Lane Johnson, Mailata, Kelsey's back, lost Simualu, but I think you can get past that. Philly is one team that makes sense to do it based on them having everything complete. And Philly's a team, I think to do this, you have to have a mantra of, even though we're going to take this player in the first round, we can still get over this pick. We can still supplement the pick in the draft. We draft so well throughout the entire board that we can do this. We can afford to do this. And I think Philly's the team that makes the most sense. If you felt that way about, say, the Cowboys too, where they draft really well throughout the entire draft, I won't smash you for making the pick. But I think that's the one example, and it kind of feeds into the hubris of certain front offices. And I guess to be kind of arrogant about the way you draft is okay, as long as you can back it up, you can prove it. Philly can prove it. They can back it up. I don't know what a team in the AFC might think about that, maybe doing the same thing to take them. Whether it's the Chiefs with overkill, I have no idea. But a team that I know can do it is Philadelphia. Anybody else you think?
I mean, if you want to play like the spiting role, I mean, it could be the Chargers. They dump Austin Eckler and they take, because he would be a good running back in, say, a Kellen Moore offense, like a true Kellen Moore offense. Bijan Robinson would be like the one to put them over, because they have the playmakers everywhere else. Yeah, they're kind of absent on the offensive line, but you add someone like Bijan Robinson, who basically can play any position and give you, you don't know what I'm about to say. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes a bunch of sense. I mean, for them. But again, it's as long as when you make that pick and you understand that pick, just understand that the shelf life is going to be short, and there's no exceptions. And we've all told ourselves, no, this guy's different. This guy's built different. They wear down almost about the same. The axles fall off. Todd Gurley. They all fall, like the rotors run down very thin, very quickly, and it all happens around their sixth season in the NFL for the most part. So if you're gonna take them in the first round, just my advice to whatever team chooses to do that: secure the fifth-year option, maybe tag them, send them on their way, because it does not end pretty, and the story has been told time and time again, and the results are never pretty. So with that said, guys, I guess we'll wrap the show from this point. So from my co-host Tyler Moore, I'm LP Cruz, and this has been the Freshman 15 podcast. Peace.